I think today that I'm going to call this episode How Not to Do a Blue Screen. And the reason I say that is because I think it's easier to kind of show you some of the mistakes and pitfalls of doing a blue screen or green screen setup that you can learn to avoid and therefore do better blue screening. It's actually not too hard to set up a blue screen, but to get the lighting correct, to set up your camera properly, and to get a good key, there are a few things that you might want to avoid. So I'm going to first show you here the blue screen setup that I have right here, and then I'm going to point out a few little errors and a few things that you can kind of learn from when you're doing it yourself. In case you're wondering exactly where I am, this is actually my studio, my garage, and this here is the stand support system that I purchased for my backdrop. Now these are easily purchased at any photo store, or you can also get them through the internet, and all they do is basically hold the material that you're suspending. These ones are very compact, very portable. They come with a bag, so you can transport them with no problem, and they're not too much of a hassle. Here I have clamps along the top to hold the blue screen just against the crossbar that holds it up. Now this blue screen that I'm using right here is actually made of an extremely rare and expensive material. You have to travel quite a ways to actually get this particular material. It's made in Thailand by monks that live there in the mountains, and if you don't get exactly the right kind of material, your blue screen will absolutely look like garbage. So it's really make sure you get the ones from Thailand, from the monks. Actually no, this particular blue screen is a bed sheet, in fact. I had a real green screen that I had purchased prior to this, but I had sold it to a client of mine, so I figured out that bed sheets actually do work quite well. It's not the best solution, so if you can get a real blue screen or green screen, by all means do so. It doesn't really matter what tone or what color the screen is, as long as it's a solid color. You can use, with video, it doesn't matter. You can use any tone. This is actually a lighter blue color that you'll notice, compared to what most of the other blue screens that you'd see look like. But when you're keying it, all you have to do is change your settings to match that particular shade. So really, as far as color goes, if you can get a professional green screen or blue screen, great. If not, you know, just grab a bed sheet. Now I'm going to show you a few problems with this blue screen setup here. I've slightly modified my setup. First thing you'll notice right here is all those wrinkles in the material. That's because basically this is a bed sheet. Normally you wouldn't have those type of materials there, so if you can get an iron and iron those out, smooth them out, it'll make it much cleaner. As you'll notice in the left corner here, my lighting is simply way too powerful in that one corner, so I have a major area of overexposure there. And in the right corner here, it's far too dark. So that's one of the most important first rules of doing a blue screen setup, is that your lighting is even all across the blue screen. If you have bright areas on one side, it'll be more difficult to key out that area. Now what you can do is you can put your main subject in the center of the blue screen, and as long as the area around your subject is properly lit, you can put a mat around the outer edges to cut off those areas that are not as good. You'll also see in the material that it is quite slack in some areas, causing shadows to be cast in the actual material. The ideal thing to do is to have it tight to make sure that you don't have those areas of slackness, so that your entire surface is perfectly even. Normally my blue screen would touch the floor. Now this one, since it is a bed sheet, is too short to actually reach the floor, so I've added some duct tape to the corners here to actually anchor it down to the ground. And what that does, it just makes it tighter to make less wrinkles and just gives an overall smoother background. One other good piece of advice when you're setting up a blue screen like this is to turn the zebra pattern feature on your camera. That will let your camera see those areas of overexposure much easier than the human eye can see. A lot of times you'll think that the lighting is very even, but once you turn on the zebras, you'll see those areas just flash up on the screen. Then you'll know that you need to adjust either your exposure or the lighting or both to make sure that you have an even lighting. So once your zebras are even across the entire screen, you'll know that you have a pretty good lighting setup. Now as you can see, these are by no means professional lights. They're actually halogen work lights, which do work okay for video. They are a bit hot, but they actually do an okay job. You'll see here there is a backlight to illuminate my subject and separate them from the background. So it's good to have something like that so that you don't get shadows coming in behind the subject. You can also put several lights in front to illuminate the front of your subject and help give you, again, that even lighting that you're looking for. One of the other things you generally don't want to have are shadows on your background. As you'll see, the more I step back here, the more you can see some shadowing there. So you want to make sure that your subject is stepped out at least a couple of feet from the background. Another reason for that is because it will also reduce the spill that comes from the backdrop. Once you put the lights on there, it reflects a certain amount of that blue light onto your subject, and that can be difficult when you're trying to key out later. There are spill suppressors that you can use in editing that will reduce that effect around the subject, but it's better just to have them step out in front to keep them separated so you don't have to worry about that as much. So make sure when you're lighting also that you're lighting the blue screen separately from your subject. So the blue screen itself gets its own separate lighting to keep it evenly illuminated from behind, and then the subject itself, in this case it's me, gets its own lighting from other sources in front. As I mentioned, make sure you have that backlight there to get me from behind, which helps to eliminate the shadows around me and just makes me stand out a little bit more from the background again. Now, a friend of mine has brought to my attention that for DV video, you can actually use a luma key instead of a chroma key. Now, I'm using a Bluescreen, which means I'm going to use a chroma key tool in editing to remove that background. Now, if I'm shooting DV though, I can put a piece of black material or white material in front of here, use a luma key to remove that background. And apparently, that works better than using a chroma key, because chroma relates to color, luma key relates to the light. So if you can find a piece of black material and do it like that, apparently it may give you better results than a blue screen or green screen would on DV. In fact, you don't even have to use a blue screen. You could use a pink screen, or you could use a red screen, you could use a brown screen, or whatever kind of screen you want to. Blue screens I found have keyed out quite easily, especially on if you find cameras that have better color sampling, like DV Cam, DVC Pro 50, any of the HD cameras will have usually pretty good results. Another reason for that is because with those cameras, with the HDV cameras and the HD cameras, you get higher resolution imaging, and so the computer has an easier time identifying those colors and removing it. If you have less resolution, there's less data for it to work with, and it makes it a little bit harder to key it out. Another little tip that a friend of mine gave me was that if you're using a mini DV camcorder, you can actually tilt the camcorder in a portrait kind of style as you would in photography and record your entire subject that way. Then all you do in editing is rotate the image 90 degrees to turn yourself upright. The reason for that is because the resolution is higher in the width on your camcorder than it is on the height. So you can actually get, if you're doing a portrait, you can actually get a better key if you're turning your camera and then simply flipping the image in post. The idea to take a person and remove them into a different location is certainly not new, although a lot of the more current movies that have come out within the past 30 or 40 years do use the tool a lot, such as Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. A lot of the big blockbuster movies that use a lot of special effects do that, and that allows people to put digital composites behind the character. So you can put them on a battleship, you can put them in space, you can put them anywhere that your imagination can think of. So this is really a tool that really frees your imagination and lets you just be as creative as you'd like to be. As I said, I wanted to have some fun with this, so since I watched Mr. Dress Up as a child, I figured I'd get into my knight's costume and just have some fun. So really remember, you're not limited by anything except for the limitation of your imagination and creativity. So all you have to do is imagine yourself in another place or in another time and just find a picture, key out the background and go there. So really have some fun with it. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you again in the near future. Or in the past. See you later.